If you work at a church, you probably already know that you are a content producing machine. You as an organization are producing new content every single week, and often it's wrapped up in the sermon, but the sermon can get lost. It can be one and done on Sunday, and this huge piece of what you're doing to disciple and reach people can be lost in the noise of the rest of the week. So in this Word Made Digital tutorial, we're talking about how to schedule and be strategic with your sermon content all week long on social media. Hi, welcome to Word Made Digital Tutorials. I'm Joanna LaFleur, and in this tutorial, we're talking to my friend Jenny Randle. Jenny Randle is a published author, speaker. She's the founder of Freedom Creatives that serves creative people all across North America, and she's even an Emmy award-winning editor. So we have a lot to learn from Jenny about how to connect social media and your sermon in a strategic way all week long to have content that is going to connect with but also disciple your people. So thank you so much to Jenny for the conversation, but of course we wouldn't be able to do these without our partners like the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities. So thank you so much to them for partnering in this tutorial. It takes so much to run your church, and there's so many things to consider that you may or may not be an expert in the charitable space, like HR and finances and operations and board governance. And that's where the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities can easily come alongside and partner with you as an extension of your team. For their members, they're just an email or a phone call away to bring their expertise to the table with you. And so they have a huge library of resources, but also a huge knowledge database for you to access in their own people at the 4 C's. Membership is so affordable. So if you haven't checked them out, I know our church is a part of it. If you haven't checked them out and you're a church or a charity in Canada, go to cccc.org to renew your membership or to join in membership. And by the way, they also have group pension and group health insurance. So it's an amazing opportunity for you as a small team to leverage this huge organization's resources. cccc.org for more. All right, here is my conversation with Jenny Randle on all things sermons, social media. All right. Jenny Randle, welcome to Word Made Digital Tutorials. I'm so pumped to have you because you have just, really a ton of experience in this area to share with the pastors and leaders who are listening in. And one of the big things is that we've got sermon content coming out every week in most churches, and then usually it dies on Sunday. Like we never talk about it again. So
one of the biggest tragedies.
I know, it really is. And it takes some work, but you have some really, thoughtful key ways to not make that die on Sundays. So I'm just going to let her rip. Jenny, please tell us what to do better on social with our sermons.
I would love to. Yeah. So just like you said, we pour so much into creating sermon content, and then it's like a one-hit wonder. And I don't want that for our communicators. I know I've used this method within my own author speaking platform. I sometimes preach sermons, so I've utilized this. And we also, within my marketing business, have helped churches utilize this method as well. So there's two key components, which is after you request your pastor's notes, or if you are the pastor, have your notes. And then what you're going to do is go through the system of breaking down all the key elements, as well as cracking down on creating content from those key elements. So first, we're going to dive into what key elements you need to highlight within the sermon. So once you have those pastor's notes, there's 6 elements you want to focus in on. And these elements need to stand alone from the sermon. And I try to pull elements that are educational, edification, which means it's building up the church, and engaging, so that way you can get engagement across social media. So right. within that, I'll look through a sermon, and the first things I try to notice are the power punches. Those statements that pack a big punch. And the thing is, and they should be a one-liner. And the thing with these power punches is that they need to live outside of the context with which it was spoken, because if you pull a power punch and it doesn't make sense outside of the context, or it's actually biblically irrelevant, you want to make sure your power punch is still biblically accurate, and you want it to be one of those things that people will remember. For example, a power punch that I have been using is, "We dream on for the glory of God and the good of others." So that's one of my PowerPoint statements. So you go through the sermon, highlight all those PowerPoint statements. I usually highlight them in yellow. And then the next thing you want to look for is education points. So these are, I call them theological touch points or biblical, a chance for biblical literacy. And I don't see this done often across church social medias, but I really want this to be something that we can leverage and take a step further. And for example, say your pastor's preaching on sanctification, have a slide or write a blog post, and we'll get into that, what content you create around this. But define sanctification, or give cultural context to why Hebrews was written. So I think taking things a step further, you're helping your congregation learn and grow. And I'd love to see that utilized across social media.
When you're talking about like going through and highlighting or finding these punchy points, are you finding these like as the secondary person, like another outside person who can look at it with fresh eyes, or you're hoping that a pastor can actually begin to write those in or create it, thinking about how we can catch these phrases and use them later? Because some it might come really natural and some that might be really hard.
Yeah, when we've utilized this, it's more of we already have the pastor have already preached their sermon and a secondary person's coming alongside them to utilize this already done sermon in a fresh way. So I think if a pastor is creating content through the lens of, oh, I got to get those 6 key elements, they're gonna miss the main point of what they're doing on a Sunday. So. And you might not have all of these 6 elements within a sermon if you're looking with fresh eyes. But if you can, I think it's just a great touch point to move forward for socials.
Got it.
Okay, ready for the next one?
Let's go.
Okay. The other key element you want to look for are stories. And now these can just be funny stories your pastor shares, poignant stories, stories from the congregation. And when you're looking through the sermon, there's a color coding system you can develop, like maybe all stories you highlight in blue. And, it's just that way you have this, you're not recreating the wheel every time. So make sure to focus on stories. And then another key element is your main points. So a lot of times sermons will have a 3-point sermon. So you just highlight the main points and know that you'll utilize them later in developing content. And then, the other one is application. So this is a big one. What's the main call to action for your congregation? Now, a pastor might not come out and say that, but if they do, you can definitely utilize it or create something based on what they're teaching. For example, invite 3 people to our service next Sunday. That's an application point that you can urge the congregation to do. So from all those key elements, I think I listed 5. From all those 5 key elements, from there, you crack down and you create content from within those key elements. So before we move into that, do you have any questions on those things you're focusing on within the sermon?
Yeah, there's implications for like each church and thinking through like how to build time into your week to make this happen. But keep going.
Yeah. Well, I think it's worth it because as you'll see, if you do, you'll have at least 30 pieces of content to push across social if you make this priority. Right. So, all right, once you take those key elements, you can repurpose them in all these different ways. And I'm just going to bulldoze through them, and we could teach on this stuff for hours, I know, between the two of us. A blog post. You can do all those things into a blog post. Video clips for social, graphics with one-liners or carousel swipe files across Instagram, small group curriculum. You can email a message out to the congregation from your pastor or from the team. And then you could also post social media questions throughout the week that point people back to the sermon. So within all of that, so say you are focusing on education. What is sanctification? You create a blog post about it. You do video clips for social. You create a one-liner about it. You turn it into a small group curriculum. And then you email the congregation, hey, just wanted to teach you a little tip. And then you post social throughout the week. And now, of course, you would disperse. You wouldn't all be like sanctification. Like, it would go across. But if you're in the habit of developing this content, you can schedule it out. And like, this is a theme for the month as you weave in and out of different things pulling from that sermon.
Right. And so you're talking about 30 different pieces of content from one sermon that can be used, well, like multiple times a day or across multiple platforms all week long.
Yeah. Yes. and you're not reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
And you're aligned with what your pastor's teaching. Like, I just think you're a pastor, or as communicators, you prepare so much on the front end to deliver such a powerful message that the Lord is giving you. And then 30 minutes or 40 minutes or however people preach for, it's like, it shouldn't just be left there. It should be extended further, and really woven into the body of the church.
Right. Well, and we all know the stats on like not everybody's coming to church, or even in pandemic life, whether it's online church, in person. If people aren't catching the message, it gives you all these other opportunities all through the week to actually still like teach them, encourage them, disciple them, give them action items, even if they didn't come or listen in on Sunday's message, right?
Yeah. And two, if you're sharing one of the funny stories your pastor said, you could frame it in a way like, remember when Pastor Jack said that story about this guy that fell down the stairs? What would you have done? Like, just a super casual question, right? But now everyone is thinking, what would I have done? And then the ones that weren't there, they kind of are like, oh man, I missed out on something that was really funny. Yeah, I should have been there. So it's just like that extra little touch point of engagement.
Why don't people do this? If you did, because a lot of churches don't do this. And then maybe the second follow-up is, for people who would like to start, let's encourage the people who are doing it. But first, like, why don't people do this?
I mean, creatives in general are already carrying such a heavy load. So my assumption is that they're already juggling so much. This is just another thing. So I don't know how you feel about it, but my challenge would be to really prayerfully assess, like, what can you put aside to make space for this? Because you're really stewarding the messages your pastor has on their heart in leading your congregation. So I think it should be really high priority. What do you think?
I think it takes thoughtful, disciplined time to do it week over week. And like, there's so many other projects. It's like the urgent versus the important, where this is so important. It's really one of the key things the church does week to week, but it's so easy for the urgent stuff, the other deadlines, we need something for the bulletin. We're building a video project. Whatever else we're fixing on the website, that it's just easy for this stuff to just go to the side. So we want people to reprioritize this, to even try, I would say, just try for one sermon series to do this and say this is going to be what we're going to do. Yeah. Exactly. With 30 pieces of content, you can, with all this content, you could easily create stuff for just one whole month out of one or two messages. But then the other piece is, like, for people who want to start this, but maybe they feel like others aren't on board, what would you say to encourage them, or to offer to them for like the senior leader who they're working with, to make this a priority? And because they're like, well, I'd love to do that, but I've got so much else on my plate. I don't feel like I have permission to do all of this. Maybe something to encourage them, or how they can pitch this to their boss.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing is understanding the process around it and the why around it, So if you can have a process that you tweak over time, so you get the pastor's sermon, you turn it into Google Doc, you have your highlights down. And then if you have a team, one person knows, okay, I'll take care of all of red. One other person knows I'll do all the highlights. So you're developing this process and this easy system of execution. So if you can do that, that'll like cut down time in the first place. And then in regards to pitching, I totally get that. Just recasting the vision that, man, I want to extend the message that God has put on your heart. And I think it's a huge priority. Can I do it like this? It should take maybe 5 hours a week, depending on where you want to place the content. But if you can find that 5 hours, or even train up a team of people that want to volunteer in that way, I think you'll find that it's highly effective in regards to extending the shelf life of the message. And your pastor, I'm sure, is going to be so thankful that his words aren't just sitting in the 40-minute window on a Sunday or a Saturday night. And it's just going to go out even further and help, bring people into, and it's help building the future messages to come, because more the hope is that you're inviting people to church in the process, and they're getting used to the way your pastor preaches, the type of sermon content that's coming out, and they're going to be excited about it to show up on a Sunday.
You've just written a book, or rather released a new book, Dream Come True. And there's this big idea from it about taking action towards the call and influence others for Christ. Take action and influence others. I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about, actionable stuff. So tell us a little bit more about the book before we go, if people are looking for that creative inspiration.
Thanks for asking. Yeah, it's really helping to set the theology of why we dream and what our calling and career should look like within the context of dreaming with God. Do we dream too big? What if we feel like we're not dreaming enough? So it's really walking people through that. And if anyone has either a dormant dream or a tangible dream they're ready to take action on, this is really the resource that's going to hold your hand throughout the whole process. And once you're done, it's a 31-day creative adventure. Once you're done, you will have already kickstarted that dream and have a healthy foundation and theology within that.
Yay. Awesome. Well, and from your work before, I know like it's creative, it's interactive, like there's stuff you can literally get your hands on and in and do, which is so fun. It's like it's more of an experience rather than just reading a book about an idea. It's like literally making you take action day to day. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and this one's a pick your own adventure. So I'm so excited for that. Yeah, I know that's a little because nobody dreams. It's not like do it like this and then do it. So at the end of like one of the foundational pieces, you might realize that, oh my gosh, I'm struggling because I'm people pleasing. Or you might be like, I'm ready to do that next activity. So it guides you in which way to go next. And I really just pray that the dreamers are ready to take action and step into all God has for them.
I love it. Jenny, thanks so much.
Thanks,
I hope people have had like really practical roadmap for the kinds of content that they can create, and that people who feel maybe tired, frustrated, a little jaded in their work, they might dream again. They might dream with you about like what is possible, because the call on our life to serve the church, to communicate the best news in the world is like more important than ever. So thanks so much, Jenny.
Amen, friends.
Thank you so much to Jenny for that conversation. There's so much more from her if you want to check her out. Her links are down in the show notes, but thank you also to the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities for making this tutorial possible. They're an amazing team that is like an extension of your team. So if you need help in areas of operations and HR and your finances and board governance and all those kinds of things, we invite you to check out cccc.org for more information and what membership looks like today. All right, we'll see you on the next tutorial. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more of these tutorials so you don't miss one.